Okay, well, hi everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel covering the 3000 GT and GTO range of cars, or VR4 in the States where you'll know it better as. Today we're looking at removal of the front wing. You join me today after two major storms have passed through England and destroyed the place. Previously there would have been a canopy over here covering these cars, so most of you haven't seen the red one before. The red one's a restoration project. Unfortunately I didn't start doing these videos when I started that car, but I do have a series of pictures and I'll probably turn them into some sort of short video in the future so you can see what an absolute catastrophe it was when I took it on and what it's now becoming, certainly in the engine compartment, and how the rest of it will be restored in time. So for wing removal we're going to need a few basic tools. A 1/4" drive ratchet piece with a 10mm socket on the end, and a couple of extension bars because you're going to be needing to get to a few tight spots. You're also going to need a 1/2" drive socket with a 10mm. Now the reason I've got the two is because a few of the bolts we're going to be undoing are going to be pretty tight, and I always suggest whenever you're undoing bolts, always use the biggest tool available to give you maximum torque, and the smaller tools for the hard to get at places or for small pieces that you need to undo. So you're going to need those two, and the other one is a screwdriver, just a regular flathead screwdriver with roughly a 5mm tip. This will become apparent as we go along, although most of you are going to know what this is for anyway because I've talked about it in a previous video. Now, speaking of previous videos, in order to remove this wing we're going to need to remove the main bottom side skirt, or at the very least we're going to need to undo all of the bolts behind here in order to bring it out of the way to get the wing out. Now, because that was covered in a previous video, I'm not going to cover it again in this video, but just know that you will need to remove the side skirt, and to remove the side skirt you're also going to need to remove this plastic piece of splash guard from underneath, but those are both covered in a previous video. So we're going to start this video from this point, not from the point of removing the side skirt. Now before we start here, something I previously forgot to mention when we did the side skirt video is about general maintenance of your car. I've said it over and over again in almost every single video. Maintenance is the best preventative and the cheapest way of keeping these cars in good condition and with a long life. Now, one of the things you may want to consider is we see the splash guards as a full protection, but actually they only give a limited amount of protection. And if we bring the camera around here, I'll show you what I mean. If you look underneath the arch here, you'll see a whole ton of crap has built up underneath the wing there. And because of all that crap, just more and more crap will build up. And all that does when it gets wet is holds water. And as we all know, steel doesn't like water, it's going to rust. So from time to time you could take that splash guard out. It's a quick, simple job, and just clean any muck out from under there so that it stays dry and lasts you a much longer time. So here's the wing. I've got one already off the car for you. These are the holes where the side skirt goes, so you're not going to be worrying about them if you've already removed your side skirt. We have two bolt holes in the bottom where we'll need to remove those two bolts. On some models we have a side winker, indicator, whatever you call it in your country. That will need to be disconnected, but you don't need to remove it. Along the top edge, when you lift your hood, you've got 4 bolts that will need to be removed. And then on the front edge, we've got 2 here, and then I believe there's 3 here. The other holes are for other things, and all this will become apparent as we go along. So if you just give me a quick second, I'm going to move this stuff out the way and then we'll start the removal of the wing. So now we're ready to begin. All I've done is move the tools off the hood and put the hood up to give us access to the screws along the top, and it's much easier if you take your wheel off. This is still left off from the last job, taking off the sill. So we're going to begin with the splash guard on this side. This is quite a simple process, but as those of you that have been watching will know, this is my demonstration car. It's been neglected for years and years and years, not by me. It's my job now to strip it all down and put it all back to new again. So because it's been neglected for so long, just about every damn nut and bolt on this car is rusted in. So you can expect today lots of snapped bolts as we go along. And if your car's been neglected, or you live in a very wet or salty road environment, then you're going to have the same problem as me. But it's not always a big problem, and in some cases it can work to your favour. Because when you're doing these jobs and you break your bolts, it's an opportunity to see where your problems are and to rectify them. Re-drill the holes, thread them, put in nice new bolts with some proper copper or silicone grease to stop them going rusty again, and then that's a preventative measure for the future. So we're going to start this job here. There's 3 bolts here that need to be undone. Regular 10mm head, and as I said, use the biggest ratchet you can use to start off to get maximum torque. Now there is one thing I want to say about these, and it'll become more apparent once we've taken it apart. But these screws, or these bolts, go into a clip behind, a metal clip, and because they become rusted, 99.9% of the time it's going to do some minor damage to your front bumper. But this isn't necessarily a problem. The way it breaks enables us to do a very basic repair to put it back together. So let's start with these bolts. Okay, that's the first one, and what happened is exactly what I thought would happen. The clip behind has broken away from the bumper, and it's more than likely going to happen with the next 2 as well. Yep, the same with that one. And the same with that one. Exactly what I expected, and I would say of the last 50 or 60 cars that I've removed these on, probably only 2 has not had this problem. So please be ready for that. Now we're going to start with these clips here. Now you'll see from previous videos, the easiest way to do these is with a flathead screwdriver. Even though they appear to be a crosshead screw, when you look really close, they're not actually a Phillips screw, and there's no depth to them. And by using a Phillips, you need to push harder, and therefore they don't undo. Just put your screwdriver in the slot and just gently turn, allowing it to push you away rather than you push into it. Once you get out so far, then the clip pulls out. Same for the next one here. Now while you're watching me here, I'll let you know that the process for removing the wing is the same for all cars, left and right hand drive, Mark 1, Mark 2, turbo and non-turbo. Oops, excuse me. Should have turned the phone off, shouldn't I? X3. And we go for number 4. Remember, if you put any pressure on these screws, they're just going to push back in. So you really have to let it feed you away rather than you push in. And number 5. Whoops. Okay. So now the splash guard's out the way, and if I turn it over, you can see the problem we had. These little clips here that go into the front bumper have actually torn away part of the front bumper. But what you can do now is either remove the front bumper or drive your car down to a body shop where they can weld these back together, or you can just put fresh clips on, and more often than not they're going to hold fine anyway. So that's that removed. Okay, so with the splash guard removed from this side, we're now going to move over to this side of the wing. Now the reason is we've got 2 bolts down the bottom here, and I always have a policy: whenever you're taking anything apart, you always start at the bottom and work your way up. The reason is, if you start at the top, you have the weight of the product pulling it down, and if you leave the 2 bolts at the bottom, you could easily have the wing fall outwards and get bent up. So always start at the bottom of any job and work your way up to prevent the gravity doing nasty things to you. So now we turn to the 1/2 inch socket piece with a 10mm on the end, and we've got 2 bolts down the bottom here, just regular 10mm bolts, and as I was afraid of, I can't quite get this in, so now I'm going to have to move to the smaller tool to get on there. Now there's a rare treat. These normally break because all that water moisture that forms down the bottom there, but they don't even appear to be rusty, so I'm wondering if someone's had this off in the past and replaced the bolts. There's one, and then we have one more here. I'm going to need 2 hands. Okay, so now the bottom of the wing will be available to move, like so. Now we'll move back over to this side. Now here gets a little bit tricky. We've got really confined areas and lots of rusty bolts. Now if you could come in close for a second, you'll see that we've got an arm that goes from the body of the car down to the wing, and that arm extends along and then up at the back as well. So we've actually got 2 arms that join together as one piece. You'll be able to see this closer if I show you on another wing that's already off. So these are the 2 arms that come up. Now we've got 2 ways of taking the wing off. We can either separate the wing from the arms, or we can take the arms with the wing. Now I prefer to take the arms with the wing, and I'll explain why. First of all, you've got to get to these 2 bolts here in order to remove the arms. That's a really tight spot to get into. Secondly, if these bolts are rusted in, usually when you try to force them, it will end up bending the metal or even tearing the metal around here. If you undo the bolts from the far end at the body of the car, the structure of the car is so strong that the worst thing that's going to happen is snap the bolts, and those are easy enough to drill out and replace. So I'm going to take the bolts from the top. So if we come down here, bolt number 1 is just here, and that one's relatively easy to get to. Oh, and that one almost fell undone. That's another rare treat today. Wow, the sun is shining and the bolts are coming undone without breaking. That's fantastic. Okay, wow. Okay, now we move to the one at the back. Now the one at the back is a little bit harder to get to, and for that I'm going to use a small ratchet and socket piece. assuming I can get in there with that. Okay, so this is a tight one. And I'm worried about that rounding off. So I'm going to try to get the big one in there for a bit more torque to get us started. This one's proving to be difficult. Okay, that got it turning, so now I'll go back to the small one. I think I spoke too soon about the nice easy bolts, but this one is turning now again. I'm going to cut the video at this point just because it's taking a while to undo and I don't want to waste video time, so we'll come back to you in a second. Okay, so that bolt ended up breaking off as I expected. I knew I spoke too soon about the bolts that were undoing easy, but that's not a problem because, like I said, once we've got this off, we'll drill that out, retap the hole, nice new bolt, no permanent damage. So now we'll move on. We've got a couple more bolts under here. Now these ones, one here and one a bit further along. Again, on this car I expect them to be rusted, but the good thing about this is they screw into plastic inserts rather than into metal, so we stand a better chance of getting those undone. Now what I would say is, for this one, because it's such a tight space, you're much better off with your small ratchet and an extension bar of some sort. You judge for yourself which one works best for you to get in there. No, I'm going to go a bit longer. Just swap those round. There, this allows me to work part inside the wing and part outside. Just try and get that on over the rust. That's one, and then we've got one further to the back. Again, I'll work out which extension is best to get in there. No, I think that one's a little too long still. Please excuse my head in the way. Some things I can do blind and some I can't. As you can see, many of these things, if you don't know where they are, the job can be a real nightmare. And that's why I hope these videos help so many people out with finding all these little hidden bits and pieces. Okay, so that's those two out, and then we've got a final couple underneath. I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing. We've got one just here and one just there. And again, nice long extension bars will help you to get to those. So we'll start with the bottom one. And that snapped, no shock. And then number 2 just up there. And that's number 2 snapped. So that's pretty much covered everything underneath, and the wing is now pretty loose, but we're not going to pull it off just yet because we've got some bolts at the top. Now the first one I'm going to point out is one that I forgot to mention earlier. And what you're going to need to do is open the door of your car, and then you've got your rubber seal here. And behind that rubber seal, you can see another bolt. Now, I can tell you now from experience, when you start undoing these bolts, it normally bends this piece of metal here because the bolt tends to rust to the metal. So don't be surprised if that happens. It's not a big deal. Sooner or later the bolt will give, and then you'll have to just straighten that piece of metal out. Because it's underneath, nothing disastrous or scary is going to happen that you need to worry about. Once again, I'm going for a nice long extension so I can get in there easily. Okay, that one came loose. This is a good day so far. Okay, this one. Now we've just got a couple along the top, nice and easy to get to. I'm not gonna, yes I will, no I'm not. I was going to use the big socket, but then I realised there's some here that you can't get to with that. So we're going to need to mess around with the extensions just to get us into that spot there. Still can't do it. I might have to yet change to an even shorter extension to get in there. Not very prepared. As I've said over and over, these videos are not for the professional, they're for the DIY man. I do not prepare for them, and in this occasion I didn't get the right tool, so I'll be back with you in a second. Okay, so I've gone and got an even shorter extension. I said right at the beginning you're going to need a variety. I appreciate not everyone has these, but these tools are so cheap now, it's worth you buying these little extra bits. I believe you can buy a whole set of those assorted extensions online for about $10 or something. They're next to nothing. Still can't quite get that. I can get on the bolt, I can undo the bolt, but the hood's in the way. You know, I don't tend to worry too much about this car because it's all being resprayed, but for those of you that at home with your pride and joy, it's worth putting some masking tape or something along there just to stop you scratching it up. Okay, we've got it. May as well stick with this short extension here. Bolt number 2. number 3. And the final one. For those of you that are fairly new to these types of tools, you'll probably notice that I'm wiggling this a bit. In case you don't know why, it's just to enable it to work the rust and muck away so I can get the tool properly onto the head of the bolt rather than trying to work on the top of the bolt and slipping and rounding it off. Okay, so that's that completely detached now and ready to come off. There's a couple of things you need to think about when you take this off. First of all, it's quite a large piece of metal, so be careful how you maneuver it in case you scratch your doors or bumpers or anything else as you take it off. And the other thing to think about is this was originally put on using a bituminous rubber between the two metal surfaces to stop any water getting through. So you may well find this is a bit tight to pull off. Be prepared for it coming loose suddenly in case you scratch your paintwork. So we'll start here with this piece of foam. Again, this is just stuck on, nothing special, just gently peel it away to clear the wing. And now we're going to start by pulling out at the bottom and just gently lifting. Once we know it's completely free, we can gently maneuver it to get it off. So that's ready to come away now. Now there's just one more thing. For those of you that have the side blinkers, you'll just need to unplug that. There's two ways of doing it. You can either press in the clip and pull the plug out, or you can just turn the light and take it out completely like that. And now we're free. And here you can see all the muck that's built up under there over the years that remains damp constantly year round and starts to eat into the metal. So that's something you need to clean out from time to time. So that's it, wing removal complete. Not a particularly difficult job, but with those hidden bolts it can be a problem for those that aren't familiar with this particular car and its dismantling processes. I'm just going to put this down here for a second. So that video wasn't requested by anyone particular. Like I said, this one's just part of the series. Coming up is front bumper removal, where you will need to know where those bolts are in order to disconnect the two from each other. That concludes this video for today. I just want to let you know, at the moment I'm working on a website and a small forum, mostly for people that are interested in restoring these cars and who need all this information. It will allow us to exchange information between each other, tips and ideas. I'll probably put in a for sale section for those of you that want to sell parts to your cars and for those that are looking for parts for their cars. So keep an eye out for that. I will let you know when it's up and running. But for now, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up to say you like the video. Make sure you give me some comments, good or bad. I'm always interested in anything. I'm pleased to see that so many of you are enjoying these videos. They're being done for you. I really enjoy doing them and I hope they're a great benefit for you. So for now, thank you very much and I'll catch you in the next video.